I'm Christine Stavropoulos.
Κι εγώ ο Νίκος Σαμίδης. Και αυτό είναι το Greek Podyssey, το podcast της Ομογένειας.
A podcast for Hellenes worldwide, sharing stories, culture, identity, laughs and a little bit of tsugrisma along the way.
Γιατί μπορεί να φύγαμε από την Ελλάδα, αλλά η Ελλάδα δεν έφυγε ποτέ από μας.
Welcome back to the Greek Podyssey. Yasu Nico, how are you?
Hello, Christine. How are you?
Very pumped about this topic that we're going to be discussing and bringing to everybody today.
I would like to thank everyone for listening and watching another episode of the Greek Podyssey.
Yes, please like and subscribe to Spotify, to our YouTube. We get a lot of people saying, how can I watch the full episode when they watch the shorts? When you watch the shorts, our episodes are uploaded every Thursday, so you'll be able to find them on our YouTube and Spotify after the shorts.
I don't like watching the episodes. I like listening the episodes. It's my favorite.
Some people have said to me, Christine, we like to watch because we like to see what you wear. We like to see the beautiful set. We like to see your facial expressions.
I think podcast has a magic when you're listening through Spotify or other podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts and all. That's
Yes.
why I'm suggesting you may find another secret love by listening podcast, not by watching podcast.
Today's discussion is one of the most complex and emotional issues in Greece right now. Migration, irregular migration. We've got thousands of people arriving by land or sea, risking everything for a better life. But for Greece as a small country on the edge of Europe, it's become one of our greatest challenges. And I don't see a light at the end of this tunnel.
I'll agree with you because this situation, it tests Greece's strength when it comes to compassion, resources, and Greece's role within the European Union. Some people say that the country is under siege by all this irregular migration. Others say it's about upholding human rights. So we've been divided, and that's a problem, that this issue has divided the Greeks, not only in Greece, but the Greeks of the diaspora.
At what point do the human rights of some people start to impact on the human rights of the people of the land?
The locals.
The locals. Because at some point, their human rights start to be compromised when it's harder for them to live under the burden of overpopulated islands. For example, let's talk about the islands of Lesbos, Chios. You mentioned Crete earlier on.
Let's take it step by step. What's happening? So Greece is the EU front line, along with Italy and Spain. Most of the migration comes from North Africa and Middle East. That's where the waves are coming from. Many of these are fleeing out of poverty, of war, but there are some others that are taking advantage of the European Union's laws and coming in for other reasons, because they want to have a better life in Europe. They love Europe's lifestyle, or they want to establish their lives in European.
It's a sweetener. When I talked about basic human rights, people should deserve to feel safe. The crime rate is up. Crime rate surges. There'd be neighborhoods that are no longer safe to walk through. There's a lot of that which is starting to change the face of Europe. Let's focus on Greece. It's definitely changing the face of Greece. There's a lot of other impacts to that. Cultural impacts, social impacts, economic impacts. So all those things, when you compound them all together, they start to impact the human rights of the local people, the Greeks. So Nico, for the islands, the impact is very, very real. I've seen it when I've visited the island of Lesbos. Housing is limited. It impacts local communities that are already fragile and under strain. But there's the other side of that where they have shown a lot of humanitarian support to these people in need.
And generosity.
People have rushed to the shore with food, with blankets. They've taken people in. But after a while, it's like if I'm holding a glass of water and it's half full, I can hold it for a long time. But if I hold it for a very long time, even though the glass is nearly heavy, the burden becomes real. It starts to hurt.
I understand what you're saying. And don't forget, Greece, Hellenes and Greece, we are strongly connected with migration from the First World War, Second World War, population exchange. We can't be apathetic in situations like that. But at the same time, it's not what you want to do, is what you can do, because Greece lacks infrastructure to accommodate such big numbers. I want to say that in 2024 was about 50,000 people coming into Greece by sea or by land. And I won't go further back to 2016 when we had about 850,000 people coming in from Turkey through Evros into Greece. So these arrivals put pressure on Greece system. That's true. But they also reveal how deeply humanitarian our people can be. And still the question remains, can Greece handle this scale alone?
Nico, I feel even humanitarianism, and it's not going to sound nice for me to say this, but everything in life has a limit. You reach that tipping point where you think enough is enough. It's starting to impact on me now, negatively impact on me. One of the things that I'm a strong believer in is retaining identity. When immigration reaches a point where it's starting to impact your identity, particularly when Greeks are in a negative birth rate and you've got a foreign culture population that is populating, you're starting to see ghetto communities. Greece is starting to lose the face of what it was. And I know you're smiling and I know what you think, but it's a reality.
Of course it is.
A lot of locals, they have to live with this and they have the right to say, you know, I can't cope with so much more anymore. I've given my compassion. I've done enough. We're a small country. How much more can we do before we break?
Look, our job here is not to criticize, is to put the facts. That's a fact, Christine. Let's put the facts straight, whatever it means for the humanitarians or for the ones that care more about, as you said, the identity.
And I'm not taking a political side here. I'm giving both sides and I'm playing devil's advocate, because if I was to take a political side, I would say that under the previous government, this problem was exacerbated. It was at its very worst. He had an open door policy where, you know, these people all need to come in. And it took the Mitsotakis government to say, no, we've got to curb this. He started to build the wall.
Evros.
I remember it clearly when Erdogan was threatening to bring thousands of people to the border, and he did. And there was Varoufakis and protesters of that party saying, open the borders, let them in, let them in. So that government created a huge problem with the influx, because everyone was saying, Greece has an open door policy. We can just walk in. We can take advantage of the EU benefits, because that is what comes under the UN Refugee Convention. And it took then a change of government to try to curb the problem and bring it under control. The problem, though, is, as we will cover, you know, as we move into this segment, once they're in, it's really hard. A lot of people say, yes, but they want to move on to Germany. Germany then closes its doors. We can't send them back. What's the answer?
Okay, I'll say that this is an unmanageable crisis. It requires a smarter approach because both sides are very important. The humanitarian side and the national crisis side. But I'll come to what you said about the government of Mitsotakis. Has a lot of critics from some NGOs and European Union observers that we might go against the international laws by restricting the laws and whatever comes with this. So we're in the middle. We have the European Union, which has the laws about migration, and we go into that soon. And we have the real problem, the real crisis in a country. And on top of that, you have NGOs and European Union observers criticizing the measures you're taking for your country, for the safety of your country.
Can I comment on that?
Of course.
There have been a lot of dodgy NGOs that have made a fortune out of this mass migration. And I know even on some of the islands, people were renting out their houses, making a lot of money, and the NGOs, not everybody is on the same page. A lot of them took advantage, made a lot of money. So yes, they will criticize any measures to cut back immigration because it's not in their interests to curb it.
It's not just a legal issue, Christine. It has a moral side as well, this story. It's not only what the law says.
Yes, Nicole, but at what point, you can have a moral code forever, but you can't sustain this forever
I totally
based
agree.
on a moral code.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And that's why we are here. We're exposing the facts, we're exposing the real crisis and the problems, and people can make their own decision and have their own opinion about that. So what's happening with Europe? What's the story? You want to tell us?
No, you can tell us.
Europe has a law that allows everyone who comes in to Europe and he's got an asylum to travel in the Schengen,
Precinct?
yes, of European Union with freedom. So that's the open borders, internal open borders of European Union. So there are people coming with boats to Greece or by sea or by land. So they're coming to Greece. And Greece is responsible under the European Union laws to assess, approve, or reject the application. So basically, the stat says that 1 out of 3 are taking the asylum. They're eligible for asylum. What happened to the other 2? So that's a problem. So the lack of infrastructure and resources make things very difficult because these people cannot return to the country they flee away from, because there is a law says that if the country is unsafe for them, you're not allowed to send it back. And if a country now, what's happening? The country that they ran away from, they're rejecting to take them back. And they're using many reasons like these documents are not clear or this and that.
They're using logical reasons.
They're using excuses not to take them back. So that's what's happening. 2 out of 3 people coming into Greece to go to Europe are staying in Greece. Όλα τα χιμαριόρι, ο Φερετζέστης έλειπε.
And now it's the time for our legal segment with Natasha Karamihu. Please note that the content of this podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and should not be relied upon for making decisions. Always consult a qualified professional for advice tailored to your situation.
Hello, I'm Natasha Karamihu, solicitor in Athens and legal advisor to the Greek Podyssey. In this podcast, I will stress on critical issues regarding the acceptance of inheritance under the Greek law. It is understood that for many Greeks living for years in another country, their demanding daily life has forced them to put the settlement of inheritance and property issues in their homeland aside. As a result, inheritance acceptance through wills or intestate is delayed or forgotten. So the inheritance can arise either through a will or intestate, without a will. What is the procedure to follow? The unfortunate event of a loss is accompanied by a huge amount of paperwork to accept an inheritance. In the case of explicit acceptance of inheritance, the declaration of acceptance is prepared by the notary public together with the preparation of a declaration for the payment of inheritance tax. The time limit for filing the inheritance tax declaration generally starts from the death of the deceased and bears a 9-month deadline if the death occurred in Greece and 12-month deadline if the death occurred abroad. What if this deadline expires? We can still proceed with the acceptance of inheritance, but there is a fiscal fee to be paid upon. It is, however, advisable to not delay the Acceptance Act. Explicit acceptance is made in cases, for instance, where ownership of real estate is to be acquired and is to be registered at the land registry, κτηματολόγιο. Thus, one may be the heir to some properties, but this does not mean that has ownership over them until the acceptance process is completed. What if we want to register the inherited property under our names, but a false lodge already exists on this specific property? For instance, 3 siblings inherit the 33.33% of a property from their deceased mother who left no will, but one of them deliberately has already lodged this property fully under his or her name at the land registry during the pre-registration phase. What happens in a case like this? For the person listed on the cadastral sheet as a disputable right of ownership on the property is created, and any other respective right of the beneficiary is granted, even if he or she is not the actual beneficiary. However, this way, an irrefutable proof is created in his or her favor. This right can only be contested by filing a lawsuit. Please keep in mind that the correct and timely registration of property rights in the land registry is not a mere formality, but a tool for the protection of property. Owners are required to carry out a legal control of their properties in order to establish whether they have submitted timely property declarations and whether there are errors or omissions in the original land registrations. Unfortunately, many landowners find out afterwards, usually during the procedure of the transfer deed or the issuance of the building permit, the consequences of a potential incorrect declaration, as well as the incorrect registration of the rights in land in the land registry, and seek ways to correct them. Correction can be made either extrajudicially through a request for a manifest error, or judicially through a lawsuit against the Greek state in case of unknown ownership properties, or against anyone who contests the rights of the property, like in the case we examined before. Correction is also required if there are errors in the owner's details, the contract, or the geometric data of the property, area, location, or if the property has been registered under a forest area. More than 500,000 properties in the country were not registered on time or correctly in the land registry. The law provides for an extension of registration deadline granted to correct the initial losses, offering a last chance for owners to protect their property before the process is finalized. For the first time in Greece, property is recorded in a uniform, digital, and transparent way. In the new land registry system, the reference point is no longer the person, but the property itself, which acquires a unique identity, the CAEC, the national code number for each property, which reflects the legal information, property rights, claims, and the technical characteristics of the property, location, boundaries, form, size. A correct declaration of ownership in the land registry system is not just a bureaucratic obligation. It is an act of responsibility towards the real estate and the foundation of security of transactions. A check today can prevent the loss of an entire property tomorrow. For all the above reasons, seeking legal guidance is critical, as it may protect heirs from acts or omissions in carrying out the necessary actions after the death of the deceased relative. Join our podcasts and take a deep dive on inheritance law in Greece.
And now we are back to our program.
I'm an immigrant that wants to get into Greece. I throw my papers away. I turn up. How do you assess me? How do you know if I am legitimate for refugee status? If they know that by international law I can't be sent away, isn't it easier to just throw your papers away? How do you process? How do you know who this person is? I won't only say the people of Greece, other European countries as well, thinking we actually do not know who we're letting into the country, whether it is a humanitarian need, whether it's a criminal cartel. And that's a major problem. It's a major problem for me and a lot of other Greeks. I'm one person you can never label as a racist, ever, because I'm not. I can see there's a lot of migrants in Greece that have come from those backgrounds, and it warms my heart when I hear their children speaking Greek. When they say to me, we love this country, they have acclimatized to the Greek way of life. They respect the Greek way of life. Their children have adapted. But there are some of these people that have only ever known conflict their entire life through no fault of their own. They come here when you've always been on your guard because you've only ever lived with conflict and you've got that flight or run. That never leaves with you. There's that other social aspect where a lot of these people aren't given psychological assessment, psychological support. So they live with this, and that's when you get the crime, you get a whole lot of social problems that arise.
Let me tell you the other thing that you might don't know. I think back, Turkey and European Union came in agreement that whoever flew from Turkey to Greece, they will return them back to Turkey. Because back, as I said, 2016, Let me tell you the other thing that you might don't know. Turkey and European Union came in agreement that whoever flew from Turkey to Greece, they will return them back to Turkey. Because back, as I said, 2016, about 850,000 migrants passed through our borders. So Erdogan came in agreement. He withdrew the agreement and he said, no, we're not going to take them back. It's your responsibility. So now sometimes political analysts says that this has been used by other governments to put pressure in Greece and in European Union, which is something for consideration. So if this used for political reasons, it's another aspect that we need to
Absolutely.
take in consideration.
So let me put this scenario to you. These illegal immigrants are funded by EU. They get their hospital, they get accommodation, they have lots of children. The Greek citizen is in negative birth rate. Where do you see the face of Greece? And this is what I'm concerned about. In 20 years from now, if we're traveling on this trajectory, what do you see the face of Greece looking like in 20 years' time if this situation continues at this rate?
Well, we have examples for that. We can see the face of Europe, like Germany, France, and other countries of Europe, that they were more open into mass migration. And you can see the results, what's happening. It will be similar, I think so.
Which is, for me, a sad thing to happen. When you've got a country that's rich in culture and that dilutes and becomes homogenized, it's like losing a part of yourself. You lose your identity.
Christine, is a practical part of it as well. You can't absorb more of what you can. Otherwise, it overflows. That's true. So, for example, Australia protects the jobs. The laws are very strict to protect the jobs of the Australian. So if you want to come here with a tourist visa, you cannot work. That's a rule. And why is that? Because you, sir, you're coming for a tourist. You can't work unless if you come under other conditions,
Other visas,
working on holidays or whatever, which is an approved method of you coming for tourism and working as well. So this is not happening, and this has boosted illegal activities, black markets, and labor exploitation,
which is another social issue.
Coming up next, the segment with Helco Consulting and Lucas Theodoro, tips and solutions for all your investments and business in Greece.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Greek Podyssey, where we'll be talking all things business in Greece. So last week we migrated to our topic of employment and how can I move to Greece under various visa schemes. We touched on the digital nomad visa, but I also want to touch on other schemes and other visa options for non-European nationals, like the work and holiday visa. This is a visa that has come into light in the last 5 years with initially countries like Canada and Australia. In Canada, the limit is under 35. In Australia, it's 31 and under. And effectively, Canadian and Australian nationals can come to Greece for 1 year, work and holiday, with the option of renewing the residency permit for another 2 years after. This is a great way not only to see Greece, learn the language, experience the culture, the sunshine, the beautiful food, but it is also a great way to start to see what work opportunities there are and obviously get a feel for what is the work environment like here. Typically, these visas are very popular in the tourism sector, working on the islands, working in summer, and often most people will change 1 or 2 employers over the course of the year. It is a great way to also see the country and also understand and meet the locals with their culture. Each region obviously has its own traditions and history. Work mobility programs like the work holiday visa with Greece is a great way for empowering young people not only to see Greece and other parts of the world, but to engage with their culture and their roots and a new country effectively. But it is also the incentive for Greeks of the diaspora, but also for non-Greeks to come and stay in Greece more longer term on a medium term basis. Not only do these programs allow you to have great insight with Greece, but we can assist on the ground with all visa and administration processes. And our team here on the ground will assist you legally, setting up your tax file numbers, bank accounts, all of those things, getting ready for you to be employed. We can also assist with finding jobs, as we do have various partnerships with businesses around Greece, especially in the hospitality and tourism sector, and obviously the most popular islands like Mykonos, Crete, Santorini, Rhodes, etc. As we said, the work holiday visa is a great way to see Greece. It's a great induction, and it is also a great way to learn about the country, experience the culture, and be immersed in this beautiful surrounding. And hopefully it might be enough to entice you to stay longer and think about Greece as a more serious career destination.
And we are back into our program with Christine and Nico.
A lot of people ask the question, why don't the Gulf states take these people in? Why don't they accept any refugees? That's a very legitimate question.
Yeah, but
I will tell you why.
give us the answer.
These are very rich nations, the wealthiest in the world. If anybody can accommodate them and from the same cultural background, it should be them. But the UAE, Saudi, Qatar, Kuwait, they're not signatories to the 1951 UN Refugee Convention or the 1967 Protocol.
And you know that?
I don't know where it was signed.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we'll have to look into that. But they have no legal framework that obligates them to grant asylum refugee status. So if you enter these countries, they only take you in for work. They take in large populations that want to work under a work visa. If you enter their country without that visa, you're considered an illegal immigrant.
Okay, can I ask you something?
And they can be deported.
Straight away.
Yeah.
Straight.
How do they deport them if the other country doesn't take them back? Where do they deport them to?
They're not going there.
That's
because
it.
they're not.
They've got the law. They know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that came to my mind, like this question. How and under what grounds European Union had this mass opening for migration? Because European Union doesn't say, yeah, our borders are open to everyone, like Greece, Italy, Spain, but we are open if you come in to travel through the Schengen countries, through European Union. What they were thinking about, like when they said that?
If it was established in 1960,
Established in 1961.
the Refugee Convention, in 1951 it was established.
Are you sure?
The UN Refugee Convention,
But union wasn't a thing back then.
I'm saying that,
You speak about Europe, not about European Union.
yes, each individual country was signatories to the UN Refugee Convention or the 1967 Protocol. Then the EU was formed, and I think it still had to operate under those conventions. Maybe it's time to revisit that original convention and make alterations to it. Maybe there needs to be international pressure put on the Gulf states where they apportion a responsibility to take in people on humanitarian. They don't acknowledge humanitarian refugees. They only look at working visas. That's it. Purely economic.
Yes, I understand that. I'll take the side of the refugee who's trying to come into Greece. I'm coming in, escaping from war, from poverty, and I'm seeking asylum in European Union. My application's been rejected. I'm illegal now. And I've been stuck to Greece for years. What's happening?
Do we build more camps? There's a tipping point.
You know what I'm saying?
And I feel for people that, when you see these destitute people, children drowning, being taken advantage of by people smugglers, there's a huge humanitarian toll to that, which we can't ignore. But there's a tipping point.
Greece act alone? Or should Europe share the responsibility more fairly? After the open borders announced by Merkel and Tsipras's refugees welcome, Germany, Paris, withdrawn their open borders agreement and the strict rules. And also other countries, I think Poland somewhere up.
Germany reached its
north.
limit too. So they reached a limit.
Okay, you proposing an agreement. You say our borders are open. I'm assuming you got your numbers right. And all of a sudden, after a few years, you have people coming in your country, you're closing your borders and saying, no, we're not accepting anymore. What these people going to do? They're going to stay in Greece forever because there's an issue. They can't go back to the countries. They can't be deported back to the countries. They can't forward to other countries of Europe. what about this unfairness? And how about this not going against international laws of humanitarian laws? Why France and Germany, why we have these double standards? Like, why Greece is against the law and not Germany and France?
Is that the case, though? France has
because
the
when
right to reject.
Not everyone said, no, this is not unfair, it's unfair for the other countries, but they did it.
Everyone acknowledges that Greece, for a small country with a small population, has given more than its pound of flesh. I know Egypt has, they're at breaking point. Well, they've taken in 9 million refugees. I know a lot of them have come from Turkey, but Turkey's also taken millions of refugees. Do we look at this as a world problem rather than saying, okay, there's refugees, try to stop the problems that create refugees? Does the world have a moral obligation to try and nip it in the bud to stop the reasons and the problems that create displaced people?
That's a good question. I think yes, they do have a moral obligation.
So why wouldn't Europe, and let's throw in the US and all this, because they consider themselves the godfathers of the world that want to preserve whatever they think they're preserving, why don't we as a global community look at the problems which create displaced people and try and ebb that flow?
Because we can't
intervene in a sovereign country. Otherwise, it's an invasion.
Of course.
Yes.
That's correct. And most of these troubles happening not because, as I said, it's internal conflicts.
But we're suffering an invasion of another type. It's us invading their countries to see what's going on, but the result of not legally being able to do
Exactly.
that means we under invasion.
It's complicated, yes, because it's not fair distributed equally.
It's exactly right.
To the members of the European Union.
It should be done per capita. If there's going to be a distribution, you look at a country's population, a country's GDP, a country's infrastructure, and you say, right, legally, this is how I would do it if I was in a position to do this. I would look at each country individually and say, right, Greece has a population of 9 million. It has a surface area this big or this small. This is its infrastructure. Therefore, according to their population, they can only take in this many people. Once they've reached that limit, we look to the bigger countries that have the infrastructure, that have the financial capacity, and we look at how to distribute those people to those countries.
I think you're missing a point here, Christine. People that are not coming into Greece to stay in Greece. It's a portal to Europe. They're coming to Greece because it's closer to where they're coming from, and that's the portal to go to the rest of the Europe, to go to Sweden, to go to Germany, to go to France, to go to Italy, to
I
go to
understand
wherever.
that.
So the problem is being created not by the people that are coming in only, but the people that they're staying in Greece because they cannot be deported, send it back, or go to Europe.
I understand. So if the EU supported Greece and said, Greece will no longer legally be able to accept, don't try getting into Greece.
They'll go through Italy and Spain.
Because you can no longer go to Greece.
But they have to say, for all the front line, Christine.
Yes.
They have to say that for Italy and for Spain. And if they say that, then they're not a humanitarian-friendly European Union.
Again, you can be humanitarian-friendly, but that can't be how long's a piece of string. It can't be a forever thing, particularly when we have a huge worldwide problem. Conflicts around the world are increasing. There'll be more displaced people. Europe is overburdened because they've got this refugee deal where anybody can come in and it's illegal to reject you. It's a very lucrative opportunity for even people that don't have persecution or aren't in a desperate state. They'll think, why should we struggle here? We can just make our way to Europe. We'll be given housing, health, support, electricity paid. We will just go there and live a lot happier than where we are living here in poverty, even though we're not in danger of persecution. Maybe those regulations somehow needs to change, Nico.
Between 2016 and 2024, over 400,000 asylum applications were registered in Greece. You know how many of those been rejected? About 35 to 40% been rejected. Yet, fewer than 20 of those rejected were actually returned to the countries or Turkey.
20%.
20% of those rejected. The rest remain in limbo. Some move irregularly within Europe, others stay in Greece working informally, illegally.
And unaccounted for, because a lot of those people have no formal papers, so you don't know who they are. I also then think of all the children that are born in those camps that are living years of their life in a camp. There's that humanitarian aspect of it as well. The children that are born in those places, they didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask to be living in refugee camps for endless years on end. The people that live in the islands or the areas that are housing all these camps, that impacts on them and their culture and their life as well.
I feel sorry for them. The conditions they're living, they're not human conditions. If you can't support it, don't do it.
Let's not forget the disparity between what the EU offers these refugees compared to what the government offers its own people. Right now, there is no incentive for women to have children. So we've got a declining population.
No, there is incentive. I had it today.
Okay, what's the incentive?
3,000 euros.
Wow. Don't spend it all at once.
Come on, it's something.
Yes, but
So it's for the third children.
Offer childcare. Those sorts of benefits that make it easy for...
Yeah, but that's different.
But the people of Greece, the citizens, aren't afforded those luxuries. They're working under a broken system. It overburdens the health system. That then affects and impacts local people. When you've got a burdened health system, because you've got all these immigrants that are allowed to use the health system.
Now you're talking about the ones that have gained asylum.
Yes.
But I'm talking for the ones that they're in the camps. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There are so many people living under ridiculous conditions. Like, no one wants to live like that. I know they're saying that if we knew from the beginning that this would be the case, we're never going to leave.
So now they can't leave, you say, because their countries won't accept them back.
Yeah, the Greek government wants faster deportation. The European Union is pushing new asylum rules to share responsibility among member states. Human rights groups argue that Greece must ensure humane treatment even for those rejected, since they cannot always safely return.
So we're stuck.
Yes. So it's a gray zone. Thousands of people with no legal status stuck between countries and systems, neither accepted as refugees or removed. That's the one side of the story. The other side of the story is that we don't have the money for our own people. We're struggling with our everyday life, and we spend our resources to support asylum seekers. That's the other voice. But European Union contributes to that. But I don't know if it's enough, the contribution for the asylum seekers, and what that means when it comes to public health and housing.
I think when you look at the global politics and how it's moving, we look at European governments, how they're moving further to the right. I think the overriding problem and the cause and the reason is this very reason, because it impacts them holistically in every area of their life, financially, socially, culturally, economically. And they seem to be the ones, the right seem to be the ones that say, no, we don't want it. And that's what the people want to hear, which is, I believe, one of the key reasons why you see a lot of European governments moving further to the right.
But this has been created by the system.
Well, they're bucking the system.
So those are consequences of other actions. It's not something that came up out of an egg and say, hello, I'm here. It's a problem that's been created by previous actions.
Exactly. But you're dealing with it now.
As we say, suck it, baby. You create the problem. You need to solve it.
Who's going to solve it?
Well, you see that the leaders of the European Union, they're not willing to solve it.
I don't think they even know how to solve it.
They must not be capable of solving this kind of issues. The truth is that the issue has no easy answer. Greece stands as a crossroad between compassion and control.
This is why people like Latinopoulou, who has a big voice, and people relate to it and are drawn to it because she's saying all the things that they're thinking and feeling.
Latinopoulou has been described as far right.
That's my point. That's my point. But what she says resonates with people on both sides of politics. I've spoken to people from the very left and they resonate with what she says.
I heard Latinopoulou talking about Muslims. Greece has been full of Muslims and all that. Do you agree with her?
We need to give people the right to follow their own religion. I believe that's a fundamental human right. You can't stop that. And if people are following their religion in a peaceful manner, in a respectful manner, I don't see a huge issue with that.
But you talk about identity.
But that's their identity. We're not
No,
gonna...
we would talk about our identities.
There's a tipping point, which is what I said. That's why I asked you, what do you see the face of Greece looking like in 20 years?
And I
That
told
then
you.
becomes a problem.
I told you, the example's already there.
During the Second World War, there were so many thousands of Greeks that sought refugee asylum in Syria. And the Syrians opened their arms and embraced the Greek refugees. And even up till now, there are still Greek communities that have continued to live there. You can't close the door to human rights, and you can't close the door to other ethnic groups coming in.
You can't, by trying to accommodate the other needs.
That's my point. There's a tipping point. We've reached the tipping point. And I think that's where Latinopoulou comes in, because she sees that we have reached that tipping point where it takes us to the next level, and we are in danger of compromising our own population. That's very different to where their ideologies were coming in from.
Have you followed her?
When she speaks and comes up on my social, I've started following her.
Yeah, have a listen. It's a bit more of what she's saying.
The fact that a lot of people are resonating with her shows that a lot of people identify with what she's saying. This is why we said this is not a subject that we can cover in one episode. There's so many facets to it, and we want to explore more and speak to people from Greece as well.
It would be interesting
Interviews?
to have a few voices here from Greece, because Greece is the one that has a problem. We are just observers outside of Greece.
From the political system.
Yes, why not Mrs. Latinopoulou? She's very vocal about it.
Yeah, a lot of people resonate with what she
and
says.
we can have someone from the other side, a humanitarian voice, to express their opinion about the matter and what's the solution, because there is a problem.
A problem with no solution.
Well, it depends. Look, whose story should guide the policy? The local who feels abandoned and stressed, or the migrant who feels forgotten?
Do you want my opinion?
Yeah.
The locals have shown compassion and humanitarian. You can't say
Now I'm asking who should guide policy?
the needs of the locals.
The needs of the locals only? Then you exclude the humanitarian perspective of it.
No. I'm talking from this point on, because the locals have addressed the humanitarian aspect of it more than probably any other nation in Europe. But we've reached that limit. So now we're at the point where their voices should come first.
Okay, do you think that we as diaspora, how we can help on this matter? How we can raise awareness, volunteering, local initiatives? How we can help in that?
I feel from the diaspora should put our focus on people who are in genuine need, who are Greek, because the immigrants are well supported by the EU. So there's no point in double dipping when their basic human needs are well supported. We need to support the people that aren't covered properly and are struggling. And to me, the charities of Greece, the children's needs of Greece, the humanitarian needs of Greece, and that's where the Hellenic Initiative is a huge, important contributor and an organisation
Yeah,
to
but
that
I'm
regard.
talking about this issue.
This issue, I feel...
How we as diaspora, we can assist him to find a solution on this problem.
The only solution we can do is with your vote. Depending on whatever government policy is, you vote according to that policy, and that's really all you can do. What else can you do?
Raising awareness
Of what?
on a global level? Because do you think that Canada and USA are aware of the real situation?
They
No,
wouldn't
they're
care.
not.
But even if they are, they're not going to care. What they do, what Trump does, is he uses this situation in Europe as a justification for having organizations like ICE that just pick people up off the street and wherever he takes them and puts them. They're not going to care about the problems in Europe. They're just going to think, keep it there. They're not going to give resources or solutions to us. It's our issue in Europe, and the only thing we can do, and the good thing is that we can now vote. We don't need to be a resident living there for 2 years. Anybody that's a citizen can vote. The strongest voice we have is with our vote.
I agree with that, Christine, and I strongly feel that Greece being left alone into this, it doesn't have the support that should have, not only Greece, Italy as well. Italy is facing a huge problem, Spain as well. And those countries that are front line and the borders of European Union, they've been left alone for a decision that the bosses of European Union made. So they had the decision and said, okay, you guys sort it out by yourself. I'll give you 6 billion to accommodate this, or I'll give you 3 billion to do this, and then the rest is your responsibility. And that's the sad story for me, that our allies, the members of the European Union, they're not taking, in fact, the struggles that Greece goes through this crisis.
Forget the allies. We
I'm
don't have
talking
allies.
about the European Union.
I know.
It's European
It's up
Union,
to us.
Christine. It's not allies.
I
Maybe it's not the
know,
wrong
but,
word, but it's not up to us because we can't make decisions without the approval of the European Union.
The European Union, for me, is an elite organization where the elites make the decision for the population, and they're going to always make those decisions in their best interest. They're not going to make any decisions in our best interest. How we can help as Greeks from the diaspora, invest in Greece, build economies in Greece, infrastructure in Greece, take your business to Greece, export from Greece, do things which help the GDP, help the financial capacity of Greece, so then Greece has the capacity to look after its own citizens. The problem is twofold. There's the EU that looks after the immigrants, and there's a government that doesn't really look after its own people the way it should. It should be up to us, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's again, we're going the same. It's a circle. We're going the same thing. You're talking about the ones that have already got approved for asylum.
Take all of them out of the equation. Approve, disapprove.
But there's a problem because 2 out of 3 people, they're staying in Greece. They can't go out of Greece. That's the problem.
Yes.
That's the major problem,
When
not the asylum. The asylum be funded by the European Union. What's happening with the rest of the people? Why are they staying in Greece? They're illegal now. They're getting out of the camps. They're taking the job. They do illegal work exploitation.
So maybe keep them in the camps.
Oh, I think if European Union wants to have this kind of legislations, they need to support more. Put the money in, build up camps, proper camps, not tents with showers and toilets.
First, you've got to close off the vein. Otherwise, it's an open door policy.
I agree with that.
Close the vein and then deal with the problem and the infrastructure they have. Stop
the
so
flow.
you're not hemorrhaging. There are people hemorrhaging into Greece. Stop that. Encourage investment. Greece now is looking very attractive. There are big corporations investing in Greece. I would prefer to see Greeks of the diaspora invest in Greece so it stays within Greek-owned and help build the economy from within. And that's really all we can do, and vote according to what we want. Stop the flow, manage the problem that we have, and look at how we can improve the economy of the country. They're my 3 points.
I agree with you. I agree with the first one, to stop the flow. That's something and you're going to say, where these people going to go? Yeah, but we overflowed.
We have.
We are overflowed. It's not a humanitarian act. It's like what you can really do. That's the point.
Well, you don't want to create a third world country where then we're all under crisis, them and us. So you've got to keep the balance, and we've tipped the balance. You've got to stop the flow.
Yeah. So Greece, not only Greece, the whole Europe is under crisis. And that's true. And that's because it was bad decisions and they handle badly some of the situation.
And maybe even some clever lobbying and international pressure. The Gulf nations mightn't, their policy, they're not signatories to accept, but you're so rich. These are your people, your background. You fund the camps. You contribute, at least financially, to Europe in that regard.
And to close, I want to say that for Greeks everywhere, maybe the lesson is this: we can support secure borders under this state, as we are at the moment. We can support them and have the humanitarian side of the thing by having the help from those ones that decided to open the borders. Without help, Greece is not going to make it.
I'm leaning towards, I know you have that view. My view is humanitarian needs first to the Greek people, because there is a lot of hardship, and that should be Greece's focus. And the refugee, immigrants, whatever you want to call them, that needs to be the EU problem. And Greece needs to say, we are now closing our borders, full stop.
You can't say that.
Well, if Germany can say it, why can't
No,
we?
You can't say that.
But if Germany can,
You
why
can't-
can't we?
They open it up back again because everyone turned to them. I say, what are you doing? Like, come on. That's ridiculous. You're proposing something and then you're taking yourself out of it.
Like I said, it's a subject that's going to be revisited many
So
times.
we try to put the facts on. We try to give a sphere
Yeah.
of what's happening.
We gave an introduction. I'd be keen to see people's comments on our, watch the full episode on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify. Leave your comments in the comment section when we do our shorts, because then that's going to give us a snapshot into how we address this moving forward and who we need to bring in and how we continue this discussion. And don't forget, we also have our fabulous correspondents, Natasha Karamichou, who'll give you legal advice for your needs in Greece. And of course, Lucas from Helco Consulting. If you want to invest, if you want to buy property, if you want to start a business, he is the person to go to.
The person you can trust.
Yes.
And you can have it as your right hand.
Exactly,
in
your
Greece.
security blanket. Anyway, that's the end of this episode, Nico. It was a very emotional episode. Emotionally charged.
It wasn't emotional.
Controversial?
It's controversial. And at the same time, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
And if we don't deal with it as a problem, and I'm not talking about Greece, I'm talking about how the European Union sees this crisis, it will stay like that. Not only, it will get worse.
Definitely.
So thank you very much for being with us and listening to us. And
you.
hope we see you to the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm Christine Stavropoulos,
Κι εγώ ο Νίκος Σαμίδης. Και αυτό είναι το Greek Podyssey, το podcast της Ομογένειας.
a podcast for Hellenes worldwide, sharing stories, culture, identity, laughs, and a little bit of tsugrisma along the way.
Γιατί μπορεί να φύγαμε από την Ελλάδα, αλλά η Ελλάδα δεν έφυγε ποτέ από μας.